Future Squared, the podcast all about corporate innovation and entrepreneurship. My name is Steve Leveski, and each week I'll bring you authors, corporate innovation managers, entrepreneurs, and above all else, thought leaders on the topics of innovation, entrepreneurship, and self-improvement. Future Squared brings you a double dose of innovation inspiration every week to help you successfully navigate your innovation journey. Every Monday, I'll bring you a world-class thought leader such as Steve Blank, Alex Osterwalder, Neil Patel, Rand Fishkin, or Whitney Johnson, just to name a few. While every Friday, I'll bring you some quick digestible insights myself to help end your week on a high before you head off for the weekend. Future Squared is proudly brought to you by Collective Campus, an innovation hub, school, and consultancy that works with large organizations to help them adopt the mindset, methodologies, and tools required to explore new business models and disruptive innovation in an era of rapid change. If your organization needs support coming up with ideas, testing and turning those ideas into reality, incubating teams, driving cultural change, or connecting and partnering with startups, then visit Collective Campus online at www.collectivecamp.us. And without further ado, here's today's podcast. Welcome back to Future Squared. Today I'll be speaking with Maggie Riad, who is VP and Principal Strategist at Spigit, the world's leading idea management and innovation platform. Maggie is an innovation thought leader with a proven ability to surface actionable insights based on market research and trends. I'll be speaking to Maggie about the topic of employee engagement and how innovation actually helps not only attract, engage, but also retain key staff, particularly important in an era of rapid change. So with that, I welcome Maggie Riad. Welcome to the show, Maggie.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you. And you're currently VP and Principal Strategist at Spigit. Can you care to tell our audience a little bit about Spigit and your role with the company?
Sure. So Spigit is an innovation management platform, which is probably a fancy way of saying that we're a software company that helps, Fortune 500 or large enterprises innovate by tapping into their employees in a very efficient way. And my role in the company is I'm on the customer success side of the business, where we work with our customers to help them be successful. We realize that the software can only do so much. And when you're talking about innovation, there's all these cultural aspects and other sort of consultative things that my team brings to the table. So that's it in a nutshell.
Excellent. And culture is absolutely critical. I think it underpins so much of what companies are trying to do in this space. I mean, it's one thing to learn methodologies like the lean startup, but it's another to actually have the culture to support that thinking that underpins moving quickly and taking risks and learning from your failures and so on. So Forrester and Gartner both recently recognized Spigit as a market leader in the space of innovation management platforms. And I understand Spigit now has 5.2 million users, over $100 billion in top-line revenue growth, and has resulted, well, not Spigit itself, but has generated $100 billion plus in top-line revenue growth for its clients and over 200 patents. What are some companies currently using the platform?
Okay, that's a little bit tricky because not all the companies want to be named.
Sure.
So I'm going to try to think about who are some of the use cases we have and some of the folks that have either co-presented with us, things like that. So I know, for example, IBM is a big user, and they actually just did a huge sprint of what we call challenges, which are sort of time-based ideation sessions. They are our biggest user, and just this past summer, they launched something like 150 consecutive challenges, all at the same time. So they definitely push the platform to its limits. Citibank is another big name. Who else? Siemens are big users as well. So those are some of the big names that I know are advertised on our website.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you know the background in terms of, say, Citibank or Siemens?
Yes, actually, I worked with Citi myself because my background is in financial services. So most of my clients tend to be in the financial services arena.
Excellent.
They actually ran one of our what we call sort of transformational challenges, where they leveraged their entire enterprise, and I think it was upwards of 200,000 employees. And their goal was to tap into all the employees to identify the future of banking. And we probably cannot release too much more information.
Sure.
But it was quite successful, and it ended in a Shark Tank type selection process where some of their top executives came together, and they had 4 finalists from various parts of the world present. I actually attended the Shark Tank, and some of them were video conferencing in, like from Peru, or, wherever those teams resided. And then they picked the top idea to move forward and research, and I believe they're, in the process of figuring out how to bring that to market.
Wow, fantastic. Are you able to share how many ideas were submitted to that campaign?
I would have to look up the details, but I know that it was upwards of 500 ideas for sure, with that many ideators. And they encouraged people to form teams. So while they may have invited 200,000 plus people, many of them banded together in teams, so it didn't show up as so many users.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, in terms of, for example, in Citibank's case, I imagine when companies choose to run these type of ideation challenges, that they are that they introduce some type of constraints in terms of what kinds of ideas are we looking for, or?
Yeah, so that's part of my role, is to help them define the challenge so that it's broad enough that allows folks to ideate and actually, be creative, but it has some scope and boundaries, typically around where the influence is, right?
Yeah.
So if for example, technology is a big sticky area for many companies. So they try, for example, to say, all right, give us your best ideas with as little technology impact as possible. So so there's definitely some scoping and limitations that have to go into posing the challenge so that they can be successful and take action.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And I think, obviously, like you've alluded to there, you can't be too specific, otherwise people won't be able to come up with any really innovative ideas. But if you cast the net too wide, then you'll get all manner of ideas, and most of which probably won't align to any sort of strategy that the company's trying to execute.
Right, exactly. And that is one of the other, key sort of consultative approach that we take is what is your strategy? And then tie the challenge question to one of your strategies. And the other big thing is budget. You don't want to ask a question in some entirely new area and then look at each other and say, that's, terrific, but where are we going to get the money for?
Yeah, and I guess that then ties into engaging employees as well. I mean, it's one thing to get them to submit ideas, but if most of the ideas are, say, unsuccessful and people aren't given feedback as to why, I imagine that would result in somewhat disgruntled employees. I mean, have you seen evidence of that? Or is that why the consultative approach that you take is so important to making sure that people understand what kind of ideas we're looking for? And if your idea is not selected, it becomes quite clear why not.
Right. So, it's a double-edged sword. So for sure, our consultative approach helps mitigate some of that. But as we started the talk, culture is very important because, no matter what we say and do, sometimes culture trumps all. And, you inevitably get the group of executives that can't make a decision or that are risk averse and don't end up wanting to take some of the riskier transformational ideas. And, no matter how much consultative approach you provide, it's very difficult to change that mindset.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I guess today, Maggie, I wanted to touch on employee engagement, a topic I know you know quite a bit about. And, there's a number of studies out there showing that when it comes to Gen Y in particular, which will make up half of the workforce by 2020, which for some people is kind of scary, the opportunity to create and innovate seems to improve engagement and retention rates. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. You mean specifically Gen Y?
Well, yeah, let's talk about Gen Y.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're a generation that loves instant feedback or, immediate gratification. And what we've found when we're able to run the challenges with Spigit, because it's social and interactive and online, they can, in fact, get immediate feedback and they can draw in their peers, they can send messages. And what we found is that most of the employees that engage in a Spigit challenge, when they give feedback, they say that they learned so much, whether it's about the company's strategy, how they're now making decisions, how they select ideas, what's important, because inevitably, when you structure a challenge like this, you have to provide a certain amount of information in order for people to engage with you. And that information is many times new to employees, especially the younger employees who may not be privy to executive meetings or boardroom sessions, whatever is going on. And so through these Spigit challenges, it's a wonderful way to communicate and engage employees at all levels.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think if you look at some of the drivers behind intrinsic motivation, such as mastery, autonomy, purpose, having that immediate gratification as opposed to, say, working on a 3-year-long project where you're doing all this work but you're not seeing any real tangible evidence of outcomes or results, I guess it just serves to increase engagement, boost morale, and just show people that, hey, this is your contribution and it's actually having some kind of an impact or making some sort of difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to those 3 points, when it comes to purpose, we tell our clients many times that it's so important when you're communicating to help link all these pieces together, right? So if a customer is running multiple challenges, 3 or 4 challenges, why did you choose this topic? And how does it link back to the strategy or the values? And therefore, it's a communication tool to help everybody understand what their purpose and how they're contributing to the purpose. And as far as mastery goes, same thing, you're developing your skills. And we have several customers that provide training around ideation, how to promote your idea, how to pitch your idea at a Shark Tank. And so that allows for the skill development and the mastery that many of these younger employees are looking for, and the recognition as well.
Fantastic. And, I've touched on mastery and purpose, and I understand there is some alignment there with the measures of engagement that Spigit has published. So can you tell us a little bit more about how Spigit measures engagement?
Sure. So, in the early stages, we measure engagement with some pretty basic type metrics. So we look at how many times a user has logged in. We look at how many users were invited versus did in fact log in. And then once they have logged in, we can look at what they've done, whether it's commented, voted, even submitted an idea, and how all of that is interacting. So in the early stages, it's really just about, are they participating in the challenge? Now, as they mature and run more challenges and do more with their employees in the platform, we have something called a reputation score, which actually will show how an employee is doing with regards to ideas that actually get selected. So in the early stages, you do really well just by participating on any idea. As you mature and we get more and more data on you, we start to see, are you investing and commenting and focusing on the right ideas, which that's not necessarily a measure of engagement as much as it is a measure of innovative thinking and investing in the right ideas. But that at the end is the value that the companies are looking for. So it's not just engagement for the sake of, hitting the voting button, but are you really understanding the business model and helping us identify the best ideas for that business model?
Right. So I guess companies can then use that information to determine whether or not certain parts of the business may need some form of personal development, training in the space of innovation, entrepreneurship, design thinking, perhaps. Is that the case, or?
Yeah, exactly. I think actually most companies right now are using it on the flip, where they're using it to identify the positive indicators and identifying the top innovators in their company, versus the flip, as you're saying, where's the weak spots. They're looking at it to find the strengths and the talent management to involve those individuals in more innovation projects.
So essentially identifying the innovation champions who they can then call on to drive more projects in this space.
Exactly. And then they allow them, for example, to go beyond ideation and say into incubation, or if there's a smaller project going on that they would like their opinion or their perspective. So things like that. That's really what they're using it for. And actually many of them end up getting involved in our programs, right? Whether they come and take on a role for a short while. It's also another form of reward and recognition for them.
Fantastic. And you mentioned incubation there. How important is it to have, some sort of end game? Like, great, we've run this idea contest. I guess it comes back to the objectives. Are they purely just looking to is the company purely looking to find innovative people? Are they just looking to slowly plant the seeds for a cultural change where people are encouraged to come up with ideas and share their ideas in a public forum? Is it enough simply to just run an idea contest, or should there be some sort of next step, such as, say, a hackathon, a Shark Tank, an incubation program?
Well, that's a great question. And again, so my experience has been these companies grow with small steps, right? Most of them start by running these challenges, and then quickly they realize, okay, well, we either run out of topics or we need to do something new and interesting to keep everybody engaged. And so then they start to turn towards either, like you said, a hackathon is very popular. Some of them turn to external challenges. Others start to apply the same methodology to prototyping and incubation rather than only ideation. And so the nice thing about the platform is it's so versatile that we can aim it at whatever, business problem you're trying to solve. As a matter of fact, we do quite a bit of customer experience challenges. We do process improvement challenges. Lots of different types of businesses will come interact with us so that they can use the platform.
Excellent. So you touched there on different types of innovation. So the platform then, as I understand it, supports both your incremental, say, Horizon 1, as McKinsey likes to call it, innovation, as well as your big bang Horizon 3 disruptive innovation.
Yes, absolutely. And the nice thing is that it allows you to manage all of them. So there's different ways to whether you want to tag the ideas or, bucket and archive in different communities. So the infrastructure allows you to manage that entire portfolio. And we strongly recommend to our companies, especially, after year one, when they've tinkered a bit and got really the sense of what this is like, that they really do need to have a well-balanced portfolio of ideas. Because if you're only in the incremental, it starts to get kind of drab and people aren't as excited about it. Yeah. And on the flip side, if you're only in the transformational, it takes so long to see any progress, it's hard to keep people motivated to continue participating. So a nice balanced portfolio is usually the best.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think there's that 70-20-10 rule that a lot of companies are talking about, where 70% of R&D is focused on Horizon 1, 20% on Horizon 2, adjacent innovation, and then maybe 10% on your big bang stuff, which is in most cases unlikely to pan out. But if it does, the return on investment is much higher.
Right. But it's exciting to have it in the portfolio and be reporting back about it, right?
Of course.
So
Of course.
That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's something that companies need to be doing, because while the Horizon 1, keeping the ship afloat stuff is important in this age of rapid transformation and technological disruption, the fact is that companies need to be investing some of their budget on exploring that big bang disruption.
Right, absolutely. And, to that point, we've also supported some customers in terms of pursuing partnerships. So the platform works really well. For example, if you want to invite a variety of vendors or a variety of partners and evaluate what types of ideas do they have, what types of co-development could you go down, and then it allows you, again, to do all of that in a really efficient way. And in some cases, an anonymous way, so that they don't know each other, but you have all the information. So again, it's the versatility and the ability to draw out what our customers need and then apply it to.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the really powerful things about innovation management platforms is that you can go outside the building, and we're moving away from what Otto Schirmer calls the ecosystem towards the ecosystem, where companies are realizing that, hey, we can do so much better when it comes to product development and innovation by tapping our customers, our suppliers, our partners, or even members of the general public, as we've seen with Shell and their Game Changer program, where they went outside the building to identify a solution which now helps them produce and cool liquefied natural gas at sea as opposed to at land, which means they can open up vastly greater reserves of gas, but also avoid the risk of environmental disaster at land. But they had to go outside the building to identify that type of solution. So I think that's really one of the really powerful things about these platforms.
Absolutely. Well, and you know what? Sometimes you'd be surprised what's inside the building, right? And again, we definitely suggest that you go broad with your challenges. Too many customers have that frame of mind that says, if it's an engineering challenge topic, then I tap into my engineers. Yeah. Well, we do actually have a case study from AT&T where I believe she was a customer service representative, came up with a great new idea, which is an app now to manage texting while driving for AT&T. And again, she did not know, all the ins and outs of how to make it come to life, but it was her idea, and others, helped her build it out. So it's the power of collaboration, but allowing new, interesting people to provide a perspective that maybe you had overlooked.
Well, that's exactly right, and it is about bringing those different skill sets to the table and stuff. So, you can't have one without the other, and by tapping into your ecosystem, your networks, it's only going to help drive that innovation. But you're right. Don't discount inside the building. And if you're a large company like a Citibank and tens of thousands of employees, chances are there's lots of people in your company that are seeing things differently, maybe seeing the world through a different lens, and you can tap that using a platform like this, which makes it just so much easier for people to voice their opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are my favorite types of challenges, where we try to tap into what employees are experiencing, whether it's, what recent online transaction experience did you have that we might learn from, or what any kind of customer experience. Maybe they just went to Disney, or they had a great return experience at Nordstrom, or what, of the employees are having their own experiences. How do we garner that and use it for the good of our own company?
That's exactly right. And having those broad experiences, I think, it's all about connecting the dots, and the more people you have, the more dots you've got to connect. And that is really underpins innovation in many ways. But when it comes to selecting the best ideas, Maggie, I imagine there's a number of different approaches that companies can take. One whereby senior executives or some type of panel selects ideas, but I imagine there's also cases where ideas are voted on by people across the organization. In which case, do you have any sort of process to manage that, to ensure that campaigns or challenges don't become just a popularity contest?
Yes, absolutely. And, so we have a few different features, but we do a combination of what you just said. So, our typical process is it's open to everybody, come submit your ideas. Then we allow some time where there's no new ideas coming in so that we have a static set of ideas, and folks then can collaborate and really focus on that set and build them out to their fullest potential. Then what we do, and let's say, at this point you've got, let's just say 100 ideas. So the crowd, through their activity, starts to whittle it down to maybe 50. So then you get some feasibility going with your subject matter experts. So they can do a pretty quick evaluation out of those 50, which ones are even feasible that we would care to invest in. And so then maybe there's 30. And then you can throw it back out to the crowd to say, hey, look, we'd be willing to invest in any one of these 30. Now you tell us which one you prefer. And folks can vote, and we have a ranking feature that ranks them 1 to 30 or 1 to 20, however many there are. And then the person with the money gets to pick which one and how many they want to do. But this way, we feel like the crowd is actually engaged all the way through, and they don't feel like their role is, minimal, and they actually do get quite a bit of say all along the way as to, which idea gets selected in the end.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of other things you can do. We have an investments market where you can actually bet or invest stocks and ideas and see how they trade. We have a predictions model where you can actually see which ideas will net the most value for the company and then select based on that. But all of those, I would say, are used when the companies are more mature and they've got the basic process down first. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I like the fact that the person who controls the budget gets to make the final decision. It reminds me of a conversation I had with Jake Knapp from Google Ventures, and they run their weekly sprints, and part of this process involves people basically diverging, coming up with lots of different ideas, putting their sketches up on a wall. Everybody gets one vote except the decision maker, who gets a super vote, which essentially counts for multiple votes. But it makes sense because they're essentially controlling the budget. They probably have not in all cases, but they may have a better idea as to what the customer problem is or how to deliver X solution. And I think it just makes sense to give them that final say.
Yeah, absolutely. But along the way, the feedback that we've gotten when we do surveys after these challenges, employees are thrilled because this is a lot more voice and influence than they've ever had in the past. So is it perfect? Probably not. But is it better than what they had before? Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, is there a way to, we've talked about some of the engagement metrics of the actual challenge, but is there a way to then measure, say, the impact on employee engagement in general post the event? Have we seen evidence where, say, company X runs an innovation challenge, and then 3 months later, employee engagement is higher than what it was before the challenge?
So I don't know of a specific correlation like that, but what many of our customers are doing is they run annual employee surveys where there's a question about, how innovative do you perceive us to be, or, things like that. And we have seen upticks in those annual surveys as a result of running challenges and, continuing to do fresh, interesting things with a platform that involves different employees.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think that wraps up the formal part of the interview, Maggie. However, we're down to the lightning round, so I'm not sure if you've actually listened to one of my podcasts all the way to the end, but I ask all of my customers, all of my guests, 3 questions. And the first question, are you ready, by the way?
I am.
Fantastic. The first question is, if you could work for any company at any stage of the company life cycle, who would it be and why? and look like the most innovative companies out there, way more progressive than their peers. But then I've gone on and met people from X company or met people that work there, and they're like, well, actually.
Right,
so
exactly.
it's interesting.
Exactly. So that's why I cushioned my answer. Sorry.
That's okay. So question number 2 is, if you could ask anyone a question, Maggie, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask?
I am going to go with Mother Teresa. I'm such a big fan of hers, and I think that she had such perseverance and commitment while, maintaining so much peace. And I would love to know and talk to her about the secret behind that, because I don't see a lot of people that have both. Usually you have one or the other, and how do you have both and be so successful? So that's who I would want to talk to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And oftentimes when people have this charitable side to them, this philanthropic side, it can oftentimes come from what appears to be a place of trying to prove something or trying to appease one's ego, whereas you're right, with Mother Teresa, it seemed completely selfless.
Yeah, and just the stories that I heard and what she's been through, for her to have the strength and the peace to go through all of that and to stick with it. So, would love to tap into that source.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And the lucky last is, do you have any rituals or routines to help you stay on top of your game, Maggie?
So I'm going to take a liberty with this one. My husband and I, we pick an international destination every year, and we pretty much spend the year researching it, planning for it, enjoying it, and then recouping after it. So
right.
That's my way of refreshing and staying on top of my game.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there's studies out there that show the anticipation of an event is sometimes has more benefit than the actual event itself. Like planning for a holiday, the anticipation can be quite a stress reliever and just put you in a more positive mood than the actual experience itself, which is funny.
Oh yeah. Well, and the networking that occurs around it too, right? Because it gives you an opportunity to talk about something other than your typical topic, whether we're planning for it or just returning from it. And then, the experience itself, all the people we meet while we're there, it's really great. And I think it really helps maintain a fresh perspective, which is so important in the innovation world. So
fantastic. Well, thank you, Maggie. You've been a wonderful guest. Our listeners can all head to spigit.com for more information about the platform. So that's spigit.com. Is there anywhere they can go to find out a little bit more and maybe connect with yourself, Maggie?
Oh, sorry. I missed the last part, Steve.
No, that's okay. Is there anywhere our listeners can go to connect with yourself?
Oh, yes. I have a LinkedIn profile, and I have a Twitter handle.
Excellent. What's your Twitter handle?
I think it's pretty simple. Let me just double check, make sure.
Clearly you don't use it all that often.
It's at Maggie Riad. Actually, it's tied to my LinkedIn, so I always send things through LinkedIn, and it automatically goes to Twitter as well. So it's at Maggie Riad. Excellent.
We'll include that in the show notes for our listeners. Well, thank you again, Maggie. You've been an awesome guest, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening in sunny Chicago.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for my interview with Maggie Riad. You can find out a little bit more about Spigit at spigit.com. Later this month, we'll be hosting Ash Moria, author of Running Lean and his new book Scaling Lean, as well as the creator of the Lean Canvas. So that'll be our first Future Squared live show. So that'll be taking place on August 31st here at Collective Campus in Melbourne. If you'd like to pick up a ticket, you can do so at collectivecamp.us/events. And we've also just announced a series we're calling Tech Brunch. And yes, I have to say that I was responsible for naming it. Those who know me personally know that I'm a big fan of hitting up one of Melbourne's many awesome brunch spots on the weekend for a smashed avocado and feta. So what is Tech Brunch? Well, essentially Tech Brunch is a weekly workshop we're running with Seed Digital. It's aimed at developing your knowledge to support best practices in corporate innovation. Each week, we'll be featuring a workshop on a hot topic in the tech world with the opportunity to network over a coffee and a croissant. So the first Tech Brunch will be taking place on August the 26th at 11 a.m. And you can also pick up a ticket for that at collectivecamp.us/events. So if you're picking up what we're putting down, we'd love it if you'd take just a second, well, maybe not a second, maybe a minute of your time to like, subscribe, and maybe even share our podcast via iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. It would mean a hell of a lot to me and the team who continue to work tirelessly to put this content together for you. So until next time, Future Squared out.